We all have a story. Your story is not my story, and my story is not yours. However, we can find joy, hope, and emotional healing even through our most painful moments in life. Let's walk and take this journey of healing together, one step at a time, because your story does not define you. Hey, God's beautiful people. It's Dr. Niesha here, and welcome back to Your Story Does Not Define You, the podcast. I am so excited that you have joined me today. I know that you're tuning in from all over the world, and I am so excited about this conversation that we're going to have today. Because I have a very special guest joining me on today. So I'm super excited. If this is your first time joining this podcast, I encourage you to share this episode, share this podcast, download it, like it, run it back to your family and to your friends. Because again, I hope that these stories are blessing you all. And I hope that you are learning through these experiences that we've been sharing on this podcast, that your story does not define who you are. We all experience life challenges and we all go through things, but at the end of the day, we are overcomers and we make it and we survive. So just hope that this podcast is really just blessing your spirit. So what is your vibe today? Because I have to ask the question, because remember, you control your vibe. You get to change your vibe. If you wake up in the morning and you feel like your day is not going the way that you want it to go, remember, you have the power to change your vibe. And so for me, my vibe today is I'm a little bit tired, but I'm also feeling great because I'm not at work right now. There are some days that I have to travel. And so today was one of those days that I had to travel. So I'm a little bit tired from my traveling. But again, always grateful, always excited to just be able to be present in the space with family and friends and just be on this podcast, having these conversations with you all. And so today, I am super excited because in this episode, I get to sit down with one of my besties, who is very dear to my heart. We've been friends for over 20 years, and she's very dear to my heart. She's been in my life for a long time, and sometimes I refer to her as a sister. Sometimes I refer to her as a mentor. She's my prayer partner, my prayer warrior. She's been in my life and been so impactful in my life, and I'm super excited to have her here on today. And so I am going to be having a conversation with her today to talk about celibacy, because she has been celibate for a long time, y'all. When I say a long time, it's been over 30 years of celibacy. And I know some of y'all out there probably thinking like, what? 30 years? That is a long time. But guess what? It's very doable if that is something that you put your mind to. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what led her to that decision and how it shaped her life and what people get wrong about choosing a sex-free path in their life. So whether you're curious, skeptical, or somewhat in between, this is a conversation that is going to be worth hearing. And so today I sit with my friend, Patricia Perry, who I am super excited to share this episode with. And she is not just a dear friend to me, but she's also an associate clinical social worker, and she is a licensed evangelist, and she is a prayer warrior, y'all. Let me tell y'all, she can get a prayer through. So Miss Patricia, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you. And so before we get started, Patricia, what is your vibe today?
Well, today I have a good vibe today. It's been a pretty good day. Of course, I work. Sometimes work can be challenging, but through it all, it's really been a good day today. Less stress today. There's some days that are pretty stressful.
Okay.
But more than others. But today it's been a good day.
Okay, good. I love it. Well, I am super excited to have you here today. And thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us, because again, this is something that is intimate, but also I feel like is going to bless a lot of people. So before we get started, Patricia, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and maybe some of the things that you like to do.
Okay, well, as you have already said, I am a associated clinical social worker. Currently, right now, I am a hospice social worker, which that is a very humbling experience because the type of work that I do, I am not only just a social worker, but I am emotional social support to many. And I've been doing this for 8 years, so I've met many people. And if you don't know about hospice, it's not always a death sentence, but it is more your end of life care, comfort care, and our, responsibility is to make sure that our patients are as comfortable as possible. So my role is to be that support, not just to the patient, but to the family, to the caregiver, or those that are involved in that particular patient. So I've seen a lot of scenarios. I've seen a lot of situations, but I can say, I realized this is what God wants me to do. I didn't realize it at first when I first started doing this. But it's a ministry. It is a ministry. Right. It takes prayer. It takes patience.
Right.
Because a lot of times you have to really multitask quite a bit. And we have quite a few patients. So, and a lot of times I'm there when I've been there when that person is taking their last breath.
Right.
Or, I'm just there to be that support when, they're leaving and they know that they're, passing on. So, it's definitely a ministry, a humbling experience.
Yes, it is.
And one thing in being a hospice social worker, it has allowed me to look at my life and not take life for granted. And because of that, I do more self-care for myself.
Good. That's awesome. I love it. And yes, I know that you believe in self-care because I know you're going to go get your massages and get your nails done and just do things for yourself, and you like to travel. So I love that. And I tip my hat off to you because I completely ditto everything you said about being a hospice social worker, because I've definitely been in that role before, and it definitely is a humbling experience, and it takes a special person to be in that role and to be able to provide that support to people during their end of life. And it's a hard job because, like you mentioned, being there when people pass away and having to pronounce people's death, I've definitely been there. So I know exactly how it is. And so
definitely
hats off to you.
Yeah. And a lot of times, even with that, I don't have to pronounce it. I know some social workers do, but I don't have to do that right at this time.
Okay.
But still, like I said, there are some days it's not always peachy cream. There are some days that are really challenging. But you know what? It's life experience, and it helps. I'm growing and developing as well. So I thank God for the job, and I know this is where God wants me. So I just embrace it and enjoy and try to be the best I can be as a social worker, as that support. But also, like you said, I like to travel. I do like to travel. I do self-care, all of it. Facials. I exercise. I have a personal trainer. I've been doing that for 3 years. So I really, try to take care of myself, do my part, working on, making better food choices, good food choices, so working on those things and making sure that I have peace, because you have to, when you're pouring yourself out to others, you have to pour into yourself, and you may not have anybody to pour into you.
Right.
Thank God that I have a relationship with God. So I pray a lot, as you mentioned. But I pour into myself, even if it means I call it minding my own business. Like that's what I call it. Shutting down. Taking some time to myself. I don't care if it's in my room or whatever, just being quiet. I like quietness, some quietness.
Right.
I don't even not think. I don't even have to think. Just be quiet.
Right. That stillness is some of the best self-care.
Stillness. You have to take care of yourself,
Yes.
and I found that out in the last few years.
Okay.
I didn't really in my 40s. I didn't really, I didn't think about it. But when I got in my later 50s, and that's when I start really, pouring into myself, taking time, and then making choices. If my body says shut it down, that means, and it doesn't mean you're sleepy. It means you're tired. So I'm not going to ride myself. I'm going to take time for myself and shut it down and rest. I don't care if it's a nap and take an hour.
Right.
But you have to take time and listen to your bodies. Also, like you said, I like to get I make sure I get pedicures, spa pedicures.
Uh-huh.
I make sure I take care of myself.
Right.
And do things that I enjoy doing, that I want to do.
Yes, I love it.
Myself.
I love it. I love it. Taking care of yourself. That is so important.
Right.
And
I am a mother of 5 as well. A mother of 5 adult children.
Okay.
So I'm that. I'm a grandmother of 6 and a great grandmother of 4.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah. So,
yes.
And so, it's like this. I used to watch children, my grandchildren, quite a bit, probably before my 50s.
Uh-huh.
But now, I'm off duty. I call it off duty. I'm off duty.
That's right.
If I want to deal with grandkids, I go see them. I go visit. I don't do a lot of babysitting. I used to, because I was a young grandmother. But I really enjoy taking time for myself, and I like to say no.
Yes, I love it. So with that being said, because no is a powerful word, and I want to just transition into your story, because one of the things you talked about is about choices and about making choices. And so the choice that you made to be celibate for all these years was definitely something that takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of determination and sacrifice. And so I want to dive into your story, because I really, really would love for you to kind of talk about that. So I'm going to ask you a few questions just to kind of, hear your feedback. I mean, one of the things that I would like to say is, I know you have a birthday coming up, and I'm not going to say what your age is. I'll leave that up to you to decide. But she looks amazing, y'all, for her age. And, I feel like God has really been faithful in her life. And so, Patricia, what inspired your decision to become celibate? Was it spiritual, personal, or was it something else?
I'm going to say it started with spiritual, but, it started with spiritual, and then it became personal as well. But when I, gave my life to Christ, I was already a divorced parent. Mm-hmm. So I had 5 children. And, you really don't have time for a lot of things. Of course, I wanted to be married, again, but I wanted to be married. I wanted a happy marriage, a successful marriage. Well, that didn't happen.
Uh-huh.
So, I had to really dive into taking care of my children, being that mother to them. I had to, refocus. Okay. That was my first, responsibility. And then I gave my life to Christ, so I wanted to learn. I learned how to put God first. It wasn't like, and I made that decision to put God first. And then as I, grew in my relationship with God, I decided, I want to be married. So I don't want to sleep around. I don't want to be friends with benefits. I know these days there's friends with benefits, closest friends, and they ain't got benefits. No, I'm shutting it down. So they take discipline. Yeah. So, so I do fasting, a lot of fasting. Uh-huh. When I was younger, I fasted more, more fasting. But it wasn't just for that, but because I wanted to be closer to God, and I wanted God to use me for His service. So that was the fasting. Okay. And then it helped me to become more disciplined. It's not like, I've never been through anything. I didn't have urges or different feelings or attractions, but I decided to make that decision to wait on God and to discipline myself.
Right.
And and to prayer.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I did. It sounds like it took a lot because, I mean, in order to abstain, especially if you've been married before, if you know, of course you have children, so that means that you've had sexual interactions before throughout your life. And so if you've had to get to a point where you decided to abstain from that, you know, that's not the easiest thing to do. And so when you first made this decision, did you feel like this decision was going to be temporary, or did you imagine that it was going to even last this long? Because it's been over 30 years. So did you imagine that it was going to last this long?
No, because I thought, you know, that I'll, you know, probably be married maybe in my 40s or after I raise my children.
Okay.
But, you know, and I'm still open. I do want to be married, but I'm definitely waiting on God, you know, because I find a lot of times, you know, in relationships, and, you know, you can be in a relationship with somebody and, you know, you sleeping with them, but you waste all this time. You're with them, you're spending time with them.
Right.
You know, you maybe the girlfriend or the whatever, you know, significant other, whatever, but it doesn't go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? And you don't get married. And I don't want that kind of life. I don't want to live like that.
Right.
And it's a lot of times we run in and go into sex and we don't even get to know that person.
Right.
We don't become friends. And I've been guilty of that in my younger age when I was married. Because I got married a couple of times. Once when I was 17 and once when I was 24.
Okay.
So to alleviate that, I decided, you know, I want to get to know that person that I'm with.
Right.
That person, I want to get to know them, and I want them to take the time to get to know me. And there are times that, you know, we're so busy with the friends with benefits. It's the benefits, it's not the friends.
Right. And people don't understand that when you have sexual relations with people, that your souls are connecting, and that's how soul ties get formed. You know, when you are having sex with people don't realize that everything that the person that you're sleeping with, you're taking on all of that as well.
Yeah, you take on all of that, all these ungodly soul ties, and people can say what they want, but the Bible says God, he designed marriage. You know, he designed marriage. You know, man and woman. He designed that. And the Bible says that, you know, with two become one, you know?
Right.
You know, you leave your mother and father and you cleave to that wife. So, you know, I don't want that kind of life. And because I've experienced it before, you know, in my marriages, both the marriages I had, of course, I had sex before I got married. So, and I didn't really get to know. They weren't even the right ones for me.
Right.
This was something that I did, you know, because I wanted to do it, because I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I decided to quit doing what I wanted to do and start doing what God wanted me to do.
Okay.
If that meant wait, then I just wait. Well, but I didn't know it was going to be a wait.
You didn't know it was going to be over 30 years.
I could be miserable by myself. I mean, my dad used to always say something, and I never understood it. I understand it now, but I didn't understand. He said, you can get sex at a dime store. I didn't understand that when I was younger, but I get it now. I mean, you can get sex at a dime store. You know, you can. I mean, you know what I mean? You can get sex, but that love, that support, that relationship, that loyalty, that value, and I value myself.
Right.
So you know, I'm not going to just let somebody I'm not going to be a benefit.
Right.
And now if they're not going to buy me, and if we're not getting married, then I'm not going to do it. That's not going to happen. But my other thing is, I want to love the person that I'm with.
Right.
It's a commitment. You know, it's not, because even in marriage, every day is not going to be peachy.
No, not at all.
And I feel like you like that person, but you love them, but you may not feel like you like them that day.
Right.
But you have that commitment. You love that person. You're loyal and you're there and you're committed to one another.
Right.
And I don't want to be in a marriage where I'm sharing, you know, I don't want to do any of that. So I want God to be first in my life.
Right.
And I'll wait on him. I do believe that I'm getting married. but I'm just going to wait on him.
Right.
And that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And because I want to get to know that person. I want him to know me. I want him to love me for me.
Right.
You know, and loyalty is very important.
Yes, it is in a relationship.
In a relationship and marriage, because even with sex, what about when you grow old and, you know, you get older and maybe you may not be wanted, you know, that may not be something that's on the table at the time. Or when you love your partner and they love you, you're supporting, and there's other ways to be intimate.
Right.
You know, a conversation, just sitting there doing something simple. It could be watching TV. It could just be sitting there. It could be just drinking a cup of coffee, enjoying one another, you know.
Right.
Getting to know one another, just that to me, that's intimacy. So it's not always just sexual.
Right. And intimacy is important in relationships. And so when you think about just your choice to be celibate, and when people knew that this was something that you were doing, did you ever get any like negative feedback from people because of your decision to save yourself?
I don't remember getting, you mean like from my peers? Or
just from people, that you're around. Did you get any negative feedback, or do you feel like people commended you for making that choice? Because to go from a space in your life where you were active to now, you know, you're making a conscious decision to sacrifice to not be active until you feel like God sends you the person that you want for you, that he has for you. Do you feel like people, you got negative feedback or positive feedback?
I feel like I got positive feedback. And to be honest, when I made that decision, I didn't care what other people thought.
Okay.
And really, to be honest, when I make a decision and I decide that that's something I'm going to do, I don't care what anybody thinks. If that's what I'm going to do, I'm going to do. I don't allow other people's thoughts to, oh, they're doing it, so, you know, I'm going to do it. No. I know what I want, and I know how I feel.
Uh-huh.
So I know that when you're having sex with someone, it's not just sex, it's emotional, there are ties.
Right.
And I don't want all that. I don't want that unless I'm married.
Right. So let me ask you.
Important.
Yeah.
Some people feel like they can deal with that. And,
right.
You know, that's them. I don't judge. But for me, I don't want that life. And so it's very important. To me, being celibate is, I mean, like if you said, okay, I'll do it for $1 million. I don't care about the $1 million. I rather my emotional and mental, physical health, spiritual is all more important than anything. Money can't buy it.
That's right. That's right. No, I agree. And I feel like, okay, some people wouldn't pass that offer up. If somebody said, I'll give you $1 million to have sex with you, some people wouldn't pass that up. And so you talked about earlier about, you know, you don't want to be the friends with the benefits, because I know sometimes people want to have those friendships and relationships where you can have the benefits that come along with it, and nobody has to be accountable for their actions. Nobody has to be accountable for their loyalty to one another. And I know sometimes, you know, a lot of people have that concept of thinking that, okay, you got to test the waters before you get in the relationship or before you get married. Some people feel like, okay, I need to have sex with this person to test the waters to see if I'm going to be sexually attracted to people. Because I know that sometimes that is something that's important for people in the relationship. You may not test the waters before you get married, and then you get into the relationship and boom, you may not be find out that you may not be sexually attractive to people. And so what would you say about that concept when people say that they need to test the waters before they get into the relationship? What could you say? How could you speak to that with you being celibate and you have it set in your mind that when God sends you your husband, you don't have a desire to have sex with that person until after you get married? So what can you say to speak to that?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, now I'm going to speak for me. I want to be the man that I'm going to marry. I want to be attracted to him, and I want him to be attracted to me. But that don't mean I got to test the waters.
Okay.
That don't mean I got to override and go test the waters because we're attracted to one another. I believe we're adults, and you should be able to handle that.
Right.
You know, and it may seem like it's challenging, but you know, I think with prayer, and my mind is made up on what I want to do and how I want to live, and being disciplined, where everybody may not be disciplined in that area. Now, so I can't, but what I am saying, but as a person that is Christian, which I am, and a person that loves God, I know that I don't want to cross those lines. That doesn't mean I'm not attracted to my partner and he's not attracted to me, but we make that decision together, and that this is not, this is not what we're going to do. We're going to wait until we get married. And I just think that if that person values you and you value him, you respect each other's decision.
Right. That's true.
Because people that want to test the waters, and they, when you test the waters, a lot of times, you do that, and I just think it just messes it up.
Right.
It messes the relationship up. I just think it's better to, like I said, I'd rather be attracted to that person. Of course, I want to be attracted to him.
Right.
But so I think that's really important. Even in marriage, well, before you get married, being attracted to your partner. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not sinful because you're attracted. That don't mean it's lust. You're lusting. You're just attracted to them, and they're attracted to you. I want my husband to be attracted to me and be attracted to him. Right. But that doesn't mean, I want to go have sex. No, I want to wait on God.
Right.
And
okay. So let me
ask that together.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So with that, being attracted to each other without testing the waters, do you feel like, okay, even if for some reason there wasn't like an automatically sexual connection with the person after marriage, do you feel like that attraction will help to promote that that sexual attraction to each other?
You said after you get married?
Yeah, after you get married. Do you feel like, for example, if you are attracted to somebody and somebody is attracted to you, and say, you guys don't consummate the marriage until after the marriage, you don't have sex until after the marriage, do you feel like, okay, when a person finally has sex, and say, for example, it may not be what one person or both persons imagine that it would be, do you feel like in those instances that the attraction that people had prior to the marriage will help strengthen the sexual aspect of things?
Well, I think so. You know why? Because when you marry somebody, you want to have that. You should have a love for that person. Now, I know other people get married for other reasons, but for me personally, I want to have that true love. And I want them to truly love me. And I think that overall, especially in a marriage where you're putting God first and you have a love of God, I would think that would even heighten your sexual relationship after marriage.
Okay. I can see that. I mean, I definitely can see that, because I feel like, okay, if the love is there, if the sex doesn't, equal up to what people thought it might equal up, that the love will still help enhance it, because I feel like maybe in relationships people can get creative with their sexual, interactions to make it exciting and make it special, even if it doesn't seem, it doesn't appear to be what it was, right?
Right.
So let me ask you this, Patricia, because
I want to say this, though. Mm-hmm. You should be able to talk about it. How to please your husband and how to please each other.
Right.
You know what? You should be able to talk about it and discuss it.
I agree. So I've done a lot of marriage counseling or marriage therapy in my career as a therapist. And I know that one of the conversations, or the topic of conversation that often comes up, is sex and intimacy. And I've noticed that people's definition of intimacy has been different, as well as I noticed that people have a lot of issues when it comes to sex. And it's not always the man. It's not always the man wanting it, but sometimes it's the woman that's not pleased. And so one of the things that we do within a therapy sessions is that we have conversations on how they can get creative when it comes to intimacy, recognizing that intimacy, again, is not just sex, but intimacy is touch, it's cuddling, it's spending time together, it's watching TV, it's being intentional, and then also learning how the intimacy can enhance the sexual experience within the marriage. So even like foreplay, things like that before people actually have sex, and then getting creative. So if one person feels like, okay, maybe my partner is not serving me the way that I would like them to serve me. Okay, how do you guys get creative in that experience by doing other things within the marriage that is fun and that keeps it alive? So that way, okay, if maybe I'm not getting pleased in this one area, that the partner knows how to please them in another area. So I definitely think that's something that is so important.
And another thing that is important in your marriage is how you interact and talk to one another.
Right. Communication is key.
Communication, the trust, the respect. How to say things. Sometimes it's not always what you say, it's how you say it.
I agree with that.
Because you could say one thing and it could turn the whole thing off.
That's true. I've been there before. I didn't been there before, so I know. I could be in the space to, want to be intimate with my partner or my spouse, and then they say something to me that turns me completely off. So my desire is gone. It's gone, y'all. Right. Gone.
Yeah. So I think to get as a couple, you have to be mindful of that and be considerate of one another. And know how to interact and treat. It's almost just like, okay, let's say, for instance, I'm going to use a little scenario. Let's just say, for instance, I'm going to make dinner for my husband. I'm using this. And so if I fix the plate and I throw it down on the table, and just any kind of way, he's probably not going to he's going to look at how I'm serving him. Right. But if I treat my husband with love, if I'm fixing that plate with love and I'm giving him to him with love, you get what I'm saying? Right. So I think a lot of times, and I'm not saying we're perfect, but I just think that sometimes it's the way we interact with our partners, the way we talk to one another, different things that we say. Sometimes not being mindful of that other person's feelings. Sometimes we could be a little selfish and we say whatever just comes out, no filter, just say whatever. I think, and I'm not saying you're going to be perfect all the time. Right. But I think that's very important with intimacy too. Right. I agree. It makes a difference. It definitely makes a difference. And so, Patricia, so one of the things I want to ask is that, again, making the decision to be celibate is a sacrifice. Is definitely something that takes a commitment and it takes dedication. However, I also know that after 30 plus years of celibacy, that is a long time, spending time by yourself, and, a lot of times where you're not, maybe not even actively dating. And during that experience, or during this experience, have you ever experience loneliness or just longing for a partner, a relationship, a marriage? Of course. Okay. Yeah. And how do you manage that? Well, I pray. I talk to God a lot, and I just, I just pour into myself. I like to do things, so I don't like just now. Sometimes I do kind of just chill. But I pour into myself. Mm-hmm. I encourage myself. And I do have good friends, like you, for instance, and I do have some good friends, that I talk to, mm-hmm. or sometimes I just like to do things. So I like to visit. I like to, travel, go places. So I just I do things, so I don't sit there and just be idle. Right. Right. So yeah, I like to do things. So, and just always, just trying to keep a positive attitude about it. Okay. Sometimes learning, because sometimes in the process of let's just say in the process, you're going to feel lonely. Right. You're going to have, because you're human, so you're going to have these certain feelings and different things like that. But just in learning how to process, navigate through, so I do pray, and I read, I encourage myself. Right. So a lot of things like that. Okay. Which is not always easy to do. And so I hear you say
that you pray and you talk to God. So when you're having conversations with God and you're praying, does sometimes your conversations sound like, okay, like, Lord, I'm by myself. Like, when are you going to send me my partner? Or, Lord, this is hard. Or, Lord, I'm getting older. When is my partner going to come? Because you mentioned earlier about wanting to be married. So do you feel like your conversation sometimes sounds like that when you're talking to God? Or what are your conversations about your singleness and your celibacy sound like sometimes when you're talking to God?
Well, now that part about getting older, I do say that.
Okay.
Okay, Lord, I'm getting older now, but, I just ask God to give me the strength that I need day by day.
Okay.
Because just because you feel lonely, that don't mean, I'm desperate to get married. I'm just going to go get with somebody just because I'm lonely, because I don't want to do that either. I want, a true love, a marriage that God has put together, because you get lonely and go try to fix it yourself, or, and then you run into the wrong thing.
Right.
Absolutely. So I'm not going to let that loneliness define me and overtake me to where I'm get myself in a position, or that thinking that, I'm lonely, so let me go do this or let me go do that. Idleness. No. So no, I just grow past it.
Okay.
It's a growing process. So I grow
absolutely.
past it.
Right. And growth doesn't feel good all the time.
Myself.
Right.
Huh?
No, I was saying, and growth doesn't feel good all the time.
No, it doesn't. So, because the word says that God, he has plan and purpose for us. So he has good thoughts, not plans of evil,
right,
but an expected end. So he has an expected end,
right.
So God is. I'm still here on this earth. So long as we're here on this earth, we're growing day by day, growing mentally, emotionally. I may not be in the, there may be a day, some days you may feel lonely, and then there's days that, you kind of grow past that and you do other things. Like, I'm good, but I can go by myself and sit and eat. If I want to go somewhere, I can go do that.
Right.
If I want to go out of town and I want to just walk around, go shopping, different things like that, I do it.
Yes. So you still continue to live, and you find joy
in the state that I am in.
Right. Which the Bible talks about that too, teaching us how to be content in the state that we're in. And so, what would you say has been the hardest part about maintaining celibacy for this long? Because that's a long time, and I know a lot of people couldn't do it. So, what would you say has been the hardest part for you?
The hardest part? Well, it's been a long time, but I'm not going to say something to say as far as because I'm not married. It has been a long time, but I'm kind of past that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of past that, because it has been a long time. You don't forget it, but it has been a long time, and I'm learning to be content. Because I know God has a greater plan, and I'm learning to wait on Him.
Okay.
So what I want to say, the hard part, it's not just celibacy, but I want companionship. I want someone that's it's not just sex. It's, you want that companionship. I want companionship. I want to be in a marriage, or, a relationship that works comes to marriage.
Right.
To where, you are, you're in a relationship with somewhere where that, you value one another, you respect one another, someone you enjoy spending time with, being with, that you can see yourself spending a lifetime with. Those things are important, those little times, because, sex may not always be on the table all the time.
Right.
It may get to that point. I know at first it may, but then later on it could change.
Right.
So, and then being comfortable with yourself.
Right, that's true.
Because if you're not comfortable with yourself, then you're definitely not going to be comfortable in a marriage or with the partner, because you have to be comfortable in yourself.
That's true.
So, so you have to value yourself. And so all through this process, I'm learning that.
Okay.
Because I don't want breadcrumbs, and I don't want to just settle.
Right.
I think that having love is important. Now, some people may say, Because some people get married and they learn to love that person because that person is good to them, and they learn to love, and I can see that. But I'm just saying, it has to be past sex.
Right.
Definitely past sex.
Right.
Definitely.
That's true, because it's so much more to relationships, to companionship, to intimacy than the act of sexuality. Because honestly, like, we think about sex, and sometimes I think that people overrate it. Yes, it feels good to have sex. It's interesting. It's fun. It can be exciting. However, people put so much emphasis on sex when ultimately, the sexual experience in reality doesn't last for hours and hours and hours. People, it's not that long of an experience. And, it is a good thing. It's a blessing to be able to be in a space to, be intimate and have sexual relationships with your partner. And it should be so much more than just the act itself, because it is so much more than that, right? Because again, remember when people are having, sexual relationships, your souls are intertwining with each other. You're being connected. You're creating bonds that you want to make sure that you're creating with the right person, because sometimes when you intertwine yourself with somebody else, sometimes you struggle with things because, you open up doors that maybe you didn't really want to open up. You let people in, you allow yourself to do things and experience things that sometimes it's not easy to overcome. And so when you talk about just like growth, and when you talk about how this has been a process of growth and learning and identity, discovering who you are now and how you once were and becoming this new woman in God, how has celibacy shaped your identity or just your spiritual growth altogether?
Well, I want to say this too, back to what we said, and then I'll hit that.
Okay.
But I also wanted to say, in a relationship, a partner, a marriage, you want to make sure that they, are you in for the long haul,
Right.
Because in marriage, it's what sickness, health, death do you part, and some people, they get married. If they don't like something, they're ready to go get, well, I don't know. And that's why sometimes people want to test the waters and say, well, if I don't like it, then, but that's not all there is, because you can have good sex, and I've been in those positions in my marriages. You can have good sex, but the other part is just trash.
Right. That's true. That's absolutely
they aren't the
true.
person. And that's why you get connected to people that aren't really for you just because it's good sex. But are you compatible?
Right.
Do you have things? And everybody, you don't have to like exactly the same things, but, you have to be able to allow each other to grow. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's another thing, are they in it for are you in it for the long haul? Because you choose to commit, you choose to open your heart and love that person, and you could open your heart and a person could just tear it all the way up.
Right.
Because they have other agendas.
Right, that's true.
So and so that being said, I've been in those situations, and so I don't want to ever be in those type of situations.
Right, that's true.
So, and then what you just said, I repeat that question again.
So how has celibacy shaped your identity or your spiritual growth?
Well, how it's helped me because I'm knowing myself better. Like my 40s and 50s, I'm in my 60s, so early. But I don't feel it. I feel like I'm 40. Sometimes I feel like I'm younger than my kids.
She always say, y'all, that she 40. She not her age, stated age. She's 40 something.
Because I feel like that, because my daughter says I'm a social butterfly. And I'm not always a social butterfly, but she says that. But there's sometimes I'm not. It's not that. It's just that I'm not a hermit. It's just that some days you just feel like just kind of, dealing with yourself.
Yes.
And just being to yourself. And I'm good with that. So I've learned me. I'm learning me.
Okay.
I'm learning me.
Okay.
What I like, what I don't like, what I don't want to deal with. And, in my 30s and, in my early 20s, or let's say from 18 to 56, I'm raising kids, raising my children. And even my adult children, a couple of them, they had to learn that they're adults now, and they got to carry their own, I call it, you got to carry your own backpack down. So when you make these decisions, you don't come to me. You got to handle it, because I quit asking me to handle it.
Right.
So when I had to learn how to let things go. You know, I'm a mother, but I have to let them be adults, and they got to handle it, not me. You know, I raised them, so they know right from wrong. And so I had to let a lot of things go from my 40s to 50s. And that was a long process, because I had to go through a lot of things. So through prayer, learning that things that I didn't think I could get through, that I was able to, God got me through it, and I was able to get through it, navigate, process, and grow through it.
Okay, so just learning a new inner strength.
Yeah, inner strength, and it's made me stronger.
Okay.
Even making decisions for myself, and just really following through, and knowing what I like and don't like, and what I can and can't do, and that I don't have to do.
Right.
And just my relationship with God, Christ, you know.
Right.
Talking to him and just being with him.
Right.
You know?
Just kind of providing that space. Because, I mean, I know that when you don't have like an obligation to a spouse to cook and clean and take care of, wifely duties in the moment, it does afford you the opportunity to spend more time with God, right? I hear a lot of times, like, single people, which I was single for a period of time myself. And, when you're single, if you are one of those people that desire to be married, sometimes people want to hurry up and get out of their singleness because they want to be in a marriage, when sometimes singleness is a blessing. Like, people should embrace their singleness while they're in it. Marriage is definitely a blessing as well. But when you're single, it definitely provides you an opportunity to take care of yourself. And as you mentioned, I think that's one of the big blessings in celibacy, because you really get to spend some time learning and growing and knowing who you are. Developing your own identity and learning true happiness. Because I tell people all the time in my therapy room that when you are happy within yourself, when you get in a relationship with somebody that you feel like is the person that's meant for you, all that person does is just enhances what you already have going on. Because getting with somebody doesn't necessarily equate happiness. Like, you have to be happy within. And to me, I feel like as you talk about your journey of celibacy, that you're learning the things that you like to do and the things that you enjoy. So that way, when you do get with the partner, they're just going to add to what you already have going on. So I would say, like, people look down on singleness, but singleness is a blessing just as well as marriage is a blessing. And I feel like people should embrace that single life before they get married, because again, when you get married, things change. You have obligations as a wife or a spouse to your partner, and you don't always get to do things like you want to do when you want to do it.
And it's good to have your own identity.
Right.
You have to know who you are.
Right.
And have your own identity, even when you come into a marriage.
That's true. So true.
You have to know, through Christ, you learn how to be a wife before you become a wife.
Right. That is true.
I don't call myself girlfriend, because I'm not going to be a girlfriend. I'm a wife.
Right.
I'm going to be there. I'm going to support my husband. I'm going to love my husband. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to expect him to be there to do the same. But I want to be. I'm a wife. I'm not a girlfriend.
Right.
So I'm not doing all those benefits. You do all this stuff, and then you're the girl. No, I'm the wife. I'm the wife.
Right.
So I'm just right now. I'm with the Lord.
Okay.
So he's my husband.
All right. No, I love it.
But like I said, I do want to be married, but it's worth the wait. I'll just wait. Let God do it, because I've been guilty of doing things on my own, and it got me in trouble. And
it doesn't pan out. It doesn't pan out.
It don't pan out.
It doesn't pan out.
Even. And I was a bit guilty of this in my younger age, because I was married in my younger age. But you don't wait a lot of times, and you go in from a relationship to a relationship to a relationship. You don't want to be by yourself.
Right.
And you don't even know how to be by yourself. And
Right.
you don't think you can be by yourself. So you go from relationship, sex, you just keep on going, but you never ever learn who you are.
That's true.
And how to be by yourself and how to be with God.
Right.
Or even have a relationship with him because you're too busy trying to fill it with other things and having a relationship with
right.
a significant other. So you never ever learn because you're trying to fill that void,
right,
and be who they want you to be when you need to be who God has called you to be.
Ooh,
so you can be
deep.
a better partner or wife or husband to that woman or man of God that God has for you.
Right.
And so to me, it's all worth the wait. It's all been a process because I always say God to me, I thought when I turned the age that I am, I thought I'd be, back when I was younger. I thought, okay, when I get that age, I didn't even know if I was going to live to be as old as I am now. But I used to think to myself, when I get this age, I'll be all old and blah, 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 blah. But no, God has renewed my strength. Like I said, mount up like wings as eagles and running not be weary and walking not faint. And I am I feel like I'm better in my early 60s than I was in my 40s.
Yeah, growing with grace. Growing with
grace. And I have asked God that I grow in grace. I've asked, that's been my prayer. And God has blessed me to do that. It's like he did a rejuvenation in my life.
Right. Right.
And so, and I know and he's allowed me to just let things go. Things that, pull you down, let it go.
Right. Right.
You have to let it go.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Let God handle it. I had to learn that. Yes. I had to pray through that and learn how to let God do that.
Right. And that's not easy.
And I had to learn, okay, I'm celibate. But it's not about just sex.
Right.
A lot of people just, I can't wait to. No, it's not all about that.
Right.
And when people, I've heard people, lust or they're horny and all that. But that's not something. I don't feel those things. I want true love. This is for me.
Right.
So I want to please my partner, and we please one another.
Right.
But I want us to have that love for one another.
Right. No, I totally agree. I totally agree. And one of the things that I want to kind of piggyback on, and then I want to just ask you a couple more questions, and then we're going to kind of wrap up here. But one of the things that you kind of talked about just a little bit ago, you talked about, when we do things in our own way, and sometimes I feel like when we're disobedient, maybe God can give us instructions, or maybe God wants to bless us with a certain person, or maybe the person that we desire. But if he gives us specific instructions on how to do things and how to go about things, if we're disobedient, sometimes we could be blocking our blessings.
Right.
Maybe we have somebody in mind that we want, and maybe we feel like, okay, maybe, we may pray and ask God, I want to be with this person, or I want to be with that person. But sometimes he has instructions for us to follow. And when we don't follow those instructions and we're disobedient, then, sometimes we can block our blessings. So I feel like it's so important for us to know the importance of, okay, if you are somebody who's walking with Christ, or even if you're somebody that's not walking with Christ, the importance of saving yourself, even if you've been in a position where you were active before, but like Patricia, you've made the decision to become celibate because you want to save yourself for the person that you feel like God has for you. Because we all make decisions, right? We get in relationships that we feel like at the time, oh, this is the person that I want to be with, or whatever. And then eventually we find out, okay, that was not the person that was for us. I've been there, done that. And so oftentimes I think about, sometimes I sit back and reflect on my life, and I just think about, decisions that I've made, time that I feel like I've wasted over my life, and just different situations from, younger growing up to now. And I often just think about, if I could go back and change the hands of the time, like what are some of the things that I would change? And so one question that I want to ask you, one last question, Patricia, and then I want to open it up to ask you one other question. But if you could go back and speak to your younger self, do you think you would still encourage the choice of celibacy? Do you feel like you would have become celibate earlier? Or what would you say to your younger self? If you could go back to your younger self and speak to your younger self, do you think you would have done something different?
Listen to my parents.
Okay, yes. I think we all could relate to that in some way.
Because I was rebellious, so when I was younger, so I did everything I wanted to do when I want. I was kind of sneaky with them, with my parents. So when they said something, I go the whole opposite way, try to be sneaky about it, and it just got me in trouble. And you know what? People don't know, but anytime you are walking in any type of disobedience, you're gonna reap that. I had to reap all that disobedience. Now, you may reap it in different ways, but I had to go through a lot of things just because of these decisions that I made when I was young.
Uh-huh.
I was young because I got married when I was 17, my first time. So I didn't listen a lot of times. So I think if I went back to my younger self, I would have listened to my parents. And I would have been having sex with my boyfriend before I got married. I wouldn't did that, but my mind was like, I'm getting married. This is who I'm gonna be with, and I made all these things. But God didn't tell me this. That's what I wanted to do,
right?
And that's how that happened. I made it happen. So, and then maybe the second time too, and don't think I wasn't getting little warnings, dreams, but I just overrode all that.
Right.
But I was young, I was young. So, because in my mind, I wanted to be married. I wanted to, I didn't want to be by myself. And I remember my mom saying, well, when the second marriage didn't work, I was young. She says, well, you need to wait 10 years. I said, I'm not waiting no 10 years. And this is my mom has gone on in, but, it's been a long time. But, I had to go through. So if I'll just say, because when I was younger, I wasn't saved. So, I didn't get saved, gave my life to Christ until I was like 24.
Uh-huh.
So if I had to, at that time, so probably if I went back to myself, it doesn't mean I wasn't going to be having sex, but I probably would not have got married like that, So the point I'm making is, I think listening to my parents.
Okay.
I wasn't so God conscious at that time. I wasn't walking with God. I didn't start walking with him until after I was like 24, 25.
Right. And I mean, we all go through seasons in our lives. I feel like one of the important and one of the good things about life is that when we live long enough to have the opportunities to learn and grow from our mistakes. And so even I'm not even going to just say our mistakes, but our choices that we make, because, God gives us free will. He gives us free choices. We make decisions that don't quite align with what he has for us, but we still, make these decisions because this is what we feel is good for us at the time and in the moment. And so, I
do want to make a point, you talked about obedience. And you were hitting on that a little bit before you asked me the question, but I wanted to say that I found out in my process and my journey that obedience to God is very, very, it's top, number one, being obedient to God. Not doing it our way, but doing it God's way.
Yes, I mean, the scripture says it.
And I mean, God is so strategic. And I'm talking about it could be the littlest thing, but to you, but it's not to God, because if he's saying don't do this, don't do that, it doesn't always have to be with sex. It could be just the littlest thing.
Right.
Don't make that phone call.
Right.
And we don't listen and we override it and go do this.
Right.
So I have learned that being obedient to God is number one. I'd rather be obedient to God.
Right.
And obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yes, that's what the scripture
I'm not
says.
Just saying the scripture. I've lived it.
Right.
I'm living it now.
Right.
Be obedient. And God does, a lot of times he does have specific instructions. There are some people, I'm quite sure, out there listening, God has given them specific instructions.
Right.
And they may or may not have followed it. But I can tell you, when God tells you, and he gives you instructions because he made us. He knows all.
Right,
he
right.
may say, well, this person is your husband.
Right.
Or this person is your wife. But you like, oh, well, that may not even be a normal person that you are normally attracted to. But
Right.
if God is your creator,
right, he
and
knows
he
better.
made you the God of the universe, and he knows every hair on your head and know your DNA. And he said, that's your mate. That's who I have for you. But you sitting up there trying to go back to somebody that's, don't look like what you thought.
Right.
I mean, so you know better than God, right? You know more than him, right? Because you're going to do it your way after he done already told you.
Yeah, we would like to think we do. We would like to think sometimes that we do.
But when we have to look at, even when we go back to Adam, what did he do when he made with Eve? She was his rib.
Right.
So when God tells us something, I mean, he created us. So if he gives you specifics or instructions,
right.
I've learned that it's better to obey God.
Right. Yeah, it definitely is.
Because it's finna come back on you.
Right.
And you're finna go back around. It's almost like the Israelites, 40 years, he's finna go right back around the table.
Right.
You're gonna do what God say.
Right, right. No, that is so true. I mean, it definitely pays because, again, I think that, sometimes we have our own thought process and we have, an idea of what we want and how we want things. And we do things our way because we're impatient and we can't wait. And I know, the choice to be celibate is one of those hard choices, especially if you are actively dating and you're actively, being around somebody. And, we're human. So our human body parts and our human hormones, get to going and things like that. So it really takes a lot of sacrifice and it takes a lot of effort. And so as we wrap up, Patricia, what advice would you give to someone considering celibacy? And so when you think of this, I want you to just answer this question because there's men that listen to this podcast. There's women that listen to this podcast. And celibacy is not just about being a woman making the decision to be abstinent, but men also make the decision to save themselves too. So what advice would you give to someone considering celibacy, either short-term or long-term?
Short-term or long-term?
Yeah, just anybody that's considering celibacy, whether they're considering to be celibate for a short time or either for a long time.
Well, I would say that celibacy allows you the time to clear out everything. It's like a detox.
Okay.
Especially if you've been out, you've been in other relationships, or you may have just come out of a relationship, and it didn't work out right, or whatever the case may be. Celibacy gives you time to detox. If you have a relationship with God and it allows you that time to really hear from God, because when you're in a relationship and you're not married and you're not celibate, of course you spending time with that person, you all are in a sexual relationship as well, so you're busy with that person, doing things with that person, but it doesn't really allow you that time to take a breath, to detox, from things, from past relationships. It doesn't give you really that time to really talk to God and hear from God, because you got to remember when you are not honoring God, because God honors marriage,
right? And
so when you are in relationships and you're having sexual relationships or in a relationship, you really, those open doors to other things.
Right. That's true.
And open doors to other spirits.
That's true. I agree.
Demonic spirits.
That is so true.
Because that's one of the main things the devil, he does not like marriage. So he likes to tear up marriages, homes, families. He loves to do that. So that's one of his big priorities, keeping, men and women from coming together,
right,
as spouses and to glorify God, So it really allows you time to detox from everything, taking that time, and making that decision to make, if you want to be married and desire to be married, getting to know that person for who they are, not just not sexually, but who are they?
Right.
Because a lot of times you're meeting people and you don't really know who they are.
Right.
Well, how do you know they are? Just because you went and tested it 2 or 3 days after you met them or 5 days after you met them.
Right.
I mean, how are you going to really get to know that person? You don't know really who you're dealing with, whether it's a woman or a man, vice versa. You really don't know.
Right.
So,
that's true.
So that gives you time to really detox and to open yourself to, well, you're closing yourself to all those soul ties.
Right.
And all, whatever you accumulated in a relationship that didn't work out.
Right.
Or just where, even if it was casual sex.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So you're closing those doors, you're getting rid of all of those things so you can think clearly and allow God to have his way in your life, you know, opening up your will to him and letting him direct you.
Right.
Until he does send you that person that he has for you.
Right. It's that opportunity.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that answered my question, you know, and I love how you said it gives you time to detox. It gives you time to kind of rid yourself from emotions, from soul ties that don't serve you anymore. And it gives you the opportunity to do that self-exploration and that self-assessment and really, really get to know yourself and learn who you are and, you know, what you like and what you love about yourself, which I think is so important when it comes to relationships and to being in a relationship. And so I really just want to say thank you so much, Patricia, for taking this time to be on the podcast and for, you know, being transparent and sharing your story. You know, I appreciate you being here, not just as my friend, but I appreciate you being here because your story is so unique. So again, I just want to say thank you for being here and for joining us today and gracing us with your presence.
And I want to say a little bit that ungodly soul ties won't serve you at all because they're ungodly soul ties. So why are they ungodly soul ties? Because God didn't ordain those soul ties.
Right.
You know, you did not come into a godly covenant or godly a marriage that God ordained.
Right.
So these are covenants that you're making, and they are demonic because they're ungodly soul ties.
Right.
Soul ties, when, like you said, emotions, and it's spiritual as well.
Right.
And those things you have to detox from all of those things, even the pain, the heartbreak, and all of those things. And that's not always easy. It can be very challenging. It's a lot of pain, very challenging, depressing.
Yes.
Oppressing.
Yes.
So you want to give it so you can think clear and make decisions based on, you know, because it says the word says in all our ways to acknowledge Christ, God, and he will direct your path. And so he knows the things that he has for you, but how can you hear him if you're not open to what he's saying?
Right, that's so true.
We have to take time out. We don't want to take time out because we want to be microwave. You know, this is the microwave. Everything is quick microwave. Right. And don't get me wrong, you can meet your partner and it could be boom, just like your husband or your wife.
Right.
But a lot of times we don't want to wait on God and we don't allow God to come in.
Right, that's true.
Take time with yourself.
Right, that's true. And I mean, patience is a virtue, and I totally agree with what you said. That, you know, I mean, we talked about soul ties throughout this podcast, and I mean, that is so real. Like, I've been there, I've experienced it. And when you allow yourself to be connected with somebody, you know, we don't understand that when we are intimate with somebody and we are having sex with people prior to marriage, that we are also having sex with the people that they had sex with prior to us, and everything that they brought with them is coming to us too. And so it is hard to break those soul ties. Again, been there, done that. And you know what? And again, I just commend you, Patricia, for your life and just for your testimony, because it's amazing. You know, I haven't been celibate ever in my life for 30 years, and I don't think that I could. However, I thank God that I'm married now. But that's a blessing, and it's a unique testimony. And
I didn't plan on it, but hey, this is what God said.
Hey, but you did it. You did it. So that's what matters. But look, y'all, I hope you all found this podcast to be very insightful and to be thought-provoking, as I did, because this was very thought-provoking, just listening to the story. You know, it's not every day that you get to hear about someone speak about their level of clarity, honesty, and self-awareness about a path of celibacy, because this is something that is rare and that's rarely talked about, especially now in our modern culture, because, again, people want to be friends with benefits. People want to, test the waters before they get married. But whether or not celibacy is something that you relate to, there's a lot that we can take from a life lived with this kind of intention, this kind of sacrifice. It's been discipline, self-knowledge, and, choosing a path that aligns with a person's values, even when it's unconventional and even when it's uncomfortable. So look, y'all, I just want to say thank you so much for listening, tuning in today. I hope this podcast was very encouraging to you, and I hope that you could share this with somebody. And I hope that you find a message in here that works for you, even if you are married. I hope that you find a message in this podcast that works for you. So please don't forget to share this episode with somebody who you feel might need to hear it, to hear this kind of perspective, and what this might look like for them in their life. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, y'all, stay curious. Dr. Niesha here. Your story does not define you, the podcast. Be blessed, y'all.